Welcome into OutKick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, and I hope you are having a fantastic Monday and that all of you had great July 4th weekends. In fact, I imagine a lot of you are still celebrating July 4th. Just finished the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Your boy never stops working. I'll be on Fox News tomorrow. I'm about to sit down and do Fox Bet Live. Normal day here, no days off. Positive news. For all of you out there who have been obsessively angry at me because the podcast version of this show has not been updating, all of them are updating now. Several months worth of shows now downloaded all at once. You have tons and tons of ability to get my opinion on everything under the sun. Since I got back from the beach in May, all of these shows now officially on podcast. Search them out at iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. We got a lot to get to, but I want to start off with the drama that came out this weekend, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought. Many of you woke up on Sunday morning, and if you are New York Times subscribers, you were able to read this. A leaked video inflames the racial turmoil at ESPN, with all of the different individuals involved in this story, in particular Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor. So if you don't know the background on this story, let me quickly give you the background on this story, and then I'm going to unpack the story, explain what I think's going on. A year ago, roughly, Rachel Nichols was in her hotel room inside the bubble at the NBA, and she was told that she was no longer going to be hosting the NBA Finals telecast and that she was going to be replaced by Maria Taylor. Unbeknownst to Rachel Nichols, the camera that was inside of her hotel room was still on, and it was recording as she had a phone conversation with a man named Adam Mendelsohn, I believe is his name, if I'm not screwing this up. And Adam Mendelsohn is, of course, one of the supposed woke advisors for LeBron James and among others. So I'll get to that in a moment. But first, the revelation here during a 20-minute call is that Rachel Nichols was upset that she was being replaced off the NBA Finals. And she said the reason why it was happening was because ESPN had a bad record on diversity, and during Black Lives Matter, that Rachel Nichols felt she was being replaced by Maria Taylor, not because of talent, but because of race. And here's a direct quote from Rachel Nichols. "I wish Maria Taylor all the success in the world. She covers football. She covers basketball. If you need to give her more things to do because you're feeling pressure about your crappy long-time record on diversity, which, by the way, I know personally from the female side of it, like, go for it. Just find it somewhere else. You are not going to find it from me or taking my thing away. You are not going to find it," meaning diversity, "from me or taking my thing away." This is Rachel Nichols at her honest truth. She is in favor of diversity and inclusion so long as the diversity and inclusion does not impact her ability to earn a living. This is the modern day version of not in my backyard, when people are all in favor of a variety of different political statements as long as it doesn't end up with their kids having to go to schools that are not as good as they might otherwise would be, as long as there's no suddenly apartments moving in across the street from their high-end home. Not in my backyardism, NIMBYism, from Rachel Nichols. She continued, "I just want them to go somewhere else. Fine," this is Rachel Nichols, a quote, "It's in my contract, by the way. This job is in my contract in writing." She is saying that she wants for people out there to go somewhere else. She continued, "Those same people who are like," Nicholson said that the culture at ESPN's headquarters had been a challenge for her. She said, this is Rachel Nichols, "Those same people who are like generally white conservative male Trump voters is part of the reason I've had a hard time at ESPN. I've basically finally just outworked everyone for so long they had to recognize it. I don't want to then be a victim of them trying to play catch up for the same damage that affected me in the first place. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to just be nice. So Rachel Nichols, woke all-star. Rachel Nichols, Joe Biden voter. Rachel Nichols, so crushed when Hillary Clinton lost. Rachel Nichols is all about diversity and inclusion, y'all, unless the diversity and inclusion somehow impacts her own job. Then, y'all, we got to talk about this diversity and inclusion business. It doesn't make as much sense to her. And this has always been my argument. If you believe that diversity and inclusion truly is an issue, and you're a white person, leave and give your job to a black person. That's literally putting your money where your mouth is, right? Give up something in exchange for somebody else based on their race. Well, Rachel Nichols, not surprisingly, not happy about the fallout. Now, on top of this, she was having a conversation with Adam Mendelsohn, who the New York Times described as the longtime advisor of Lakers superstar LeBron James and Rich Paul. And this is incredibly incestuous, right? So Rachel Nichols is begging for an interview with one of these guys while talking with Adam Mendelsohn, which shows you how incestuous the NBA is. You want to know how LeBron James never got quizzed by anybody at ESPN about the fake racist graffiti story that he made up? You want to know how LeBron James is able to say the First Amendment has issues? You want to know how LeBron James is able to get away with all of the flagrant hypocrisies of his life when it comes to China and Hong Kong and all of that? You want to know how all of these stories occur? It's because Rachel Nichols, if she actually speaks truth to LeBron James's power, she won't get an interview. I thought it was interesting, however, that Mendelsohn said, I don't know, I'm exhausted. Between Me Too and Black Lives Matter, I got nothing left. Both of them then laughed. This is kind of funny too, because Mendelsohn, who set up a voting rights initiative for LeBron James, when it really gets down to it, he thinks Me Too and Black Lives Matter is a joke. Again, this is how tons of woke people, white, black, Asian, and Hispanic, really speak. But he said the quiet part out loud. He didn't know that he was actually getting recorded here. Now, what happens at ESPN? Well, Maria Taylor, first of all, Rachel Nichols reaches out to Maria Taylor to apologize through text messages and, quote, Maria has chosen not to respond to these offers, which is completely fair and a decision I respect. A full year and you can't work or talk with a coworker. In fact, Maria Taylor's demand was, she said, Nichols can't appear on her television show, NBA Countdown. And ESPN said, well, Rachel Nichols is going to appear, but instead they are taping all of Rachel Nichols' hit instead of doing them live, and they don't interact on the show. Now, Maria Taylor leaked this, which we're going to get to in a moment, but amazingly, while Maria Taylor declined comment, 6 different of her colleagues were happy to talk, and they managed to get an email that is very favorable towards Maria Taylor, even if it's a bit nonsensical. Here's what Maria Taylor said in an email. I will not call myself a victim, but I certainly have felt victimized. Opening sentence. I will not call myself a victim, but I certainly have felt victimized. How can you be anything other than a victim if you immediately say, but I certainly have felt victimized? By the way, this is what woke culture leads to, an argument over who the true victim is. I do not feel as though my complaints have been taken seriously, she wrote in an email to ESPN executives, including Jimmy Pitaro, a.k.a. the white guy in charge of ESPN, whose July 4th was ruined over this story. In fact, the first time I have heard from HR after 2 incidents of racial insensitivity was to ask if I leaked Rachel's tape to the media. I would never do that. Simply being a front-facing black woman at this company has taken its toll physically and mentally. Maria Taylor's contract is up in the next couple of weeks. If you want to know how a story like this actually ends up occurring, it is because Maria Taylor decided to have her people leak this story. She's the only one who benefits. She's the only one not quoted directly in the story. She is trying to extort ESPN into paying her a massive salary increase, which she does not otherwise deserve. Maybe Rachel Nichols also got a salary increase, so she wouldn't have filed a lawsuit. Obviously, her leaked phone call getting out from an ESPN camera is also an issue for ESPN in a big way. But to me, I think this is interesting. Also, of course, the New York Times says Taylor, who had recently gained widespread acclaim for her on-air comments about the murder of George Floyd by a police officer. Come on, she might as well be writing that herself. Her PR agents might as well be writing that herself. So Maria Taylor is trying to extort ESPN to get as much money as she possibly can. What does ESPN do? If I were ESPN, I'd replace Rachel Nichols and I would replace Maria Taylor and I would go hire an Asian woman and put them in the position instead of both of these women. You got a white woman who's angry. You got a black woman who's angry. Go find yourself a Hispanic or an Asian woman and leave both of these women out of your show. Look, the reality is this. Rachel Nichols doesn't move the needle. Nobody tunes in to see what she has to say. Nobody tunes in to see what Maria Taylor has to say either. These are not differentiators in the way that Stephen A. Smith is a differentiator for ESPN or Tony Kornheiser or Mike Wilbon, guys who are actually carrying the network program. People say, oh, it's sexist. Why are you pointing out the guys? Because guys are carrying ESPN shows. That's not sexist. That's reality. Most of the time, a host does not dictate whether or not people watch shows. There are good hosts. Maria Taylor, I think, is very talented as a host, but she does a lot of different programs for ESPN. I don't think any of the shows would lose viewership if she were off them, just like I don't think any of the shows would lose viewership if Rachel Nichols were off of them. So go find somebody else to host, push both of these women out. That would be my move if I were Jimmy Pitaro. But I think what will end up happening is Maria Taylor is going to get wildly overpaid. Nobody else would pay her $5 million a year. Plus, she will get that in an effort for ESPN, because this story was written, to look like they aren't racist. And the people at New York Times will write a story and they'll say, oh, ESPN has problems with prominent black women. Look at what happened with Jamel Hill. Look at what happened with Carrie Champion. Whatever else. Insert your storyline here. The truth of the matter is this. When you actually look at what the data reflects, ESPN's cutting people left and right. Kenny Mayne, Bob Lee. Basically, they got rid of Chris Berman, Lou Holtz. There's a lot of old white dudes that have been on the chopping block. Ed Werder. Sal Palantonio. I can't even keep up with all these dudes. Some of them may still work there. I don't know. But ESPN's cut a lot more white dudes than they have anybody who was a minority at any point in recent history. In fact, they've overpaid. But this is that story. So the storyline, so far as I can tell, is this New York Times story was leaked along with the audio by people who are friends with Maria Taylor. They're trying to put pressure on ESPN, arguing that ESPN will be racist if they don't do what Maria Taylor wants, which is give her a massive contract extension that, frankly, she probably doesn't deserve. She wants Stephen A. Smith money, and she doesn't have anywhere near Stephen A. Smith's audience. So that is that story. I think I broke it down pretty well. You can go read about it. You can go listen to it if you haven't heard it anywhere else. Again, if I'm Jimmy Pitaro, I just call a bluff here. I let Maria Taylor walk. Nobody's going to pay her a lot of money. In my opinion, she doesn't have that much marketability. I also feel the same way about Rachel Nichols. Both of those women, maybe TNT would be interested in them, but you've already got Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith. You got that entire Shaq and Ernie. That entire inside the NBA cast is far better than anything ESPN has to offer at all. And so this story leaked by Maria Taylor to try to extort ESPN. I want to say thank you to all of you out there who came by and said hi. I was in Atlanta for the weekend. I had an incredible time Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All three of my boys, my wife, we went to Atlanta Braves games. They took 2 out of 3 against the Marlins. The Battery is a fantastic setup. We had an amazing time. Stayed at the Omni. Thanks to Mitchell at the Omni. They were fantastic there at taking care of my family, taking care of us. That's right next to the ballpark. You could walk back and forth. Absolutely fantastic time. The Battery, if you haven't been to Atlanta to watch a game, some people say, well, Clay, I thought you were angry at Major League Baseball. I am. But the Braves were not in favor of the All-Star game being pulled out of Atlanta. So I had no issues whatsoever with deciding to go spend money on the Braves and everything there. I also want to give a shout out. I left on Sunday. We left. They had a Ronald Acuna bobbleheads. And we missed out. We were leaving, and we left. And I left the Ronald Acuna bobbleheads, which my kids had gotten. They were excited to get them, along with a couple of Braves baseballs. We left our stuff in our seats, and somebody who was sitting behind us, a woman named Sarah, I believe, let me make sure about this, she DM'd me, said, hey, some of the guys who were sitting around knew who you were. They saw that you had accidentally left your kids' stuff. And so she is mailing my kids their bag of goodies. I mean, just thank you. A profoundly awesome time in Atlanta. I appreciate Sarah reaching out. Thank you to Mitchell at the Omni. Everybody else who was helping us have a fantastic weekend. Had a great time there. And so I'd encourage you to go down to Atlanta. The Braves had nothing to do with Major League Baseball All-Star Game getting pulled. In fact, they put out their own harshly worded statement disagreeing with the decision. I love the Braves. I've turned into a Braves fan myself. My 10-year-old has got me there. Hopefully tonight against the Pirates, they get back to 500. Nashville. The Corona Bros have officially lost. Did you see the party in Nashville on July 4th? Hundreds of thousands of people on Broadway, no social distancing, no masks, there to celebrate the 4th of July. I got to give a ton of credit to people all over Nashville. I feel like the Corona Bros have finally lost in the battle of whether we can return to normalcy or not. Props to them because in the grand scheme of things, we have finally won the battle over whether or not we can get back to normalcy in some form or fashion. Huge crowds, July 4th. God bless America. And I've got a blinking light back here that is driving me crazy. I don't know if it drives you guys crazy. I'm going to turn this light off. So that should be off. I don't know what that does to the overall ambiance here of the show, but it's not flashing in the background anymore, distracting me. I don't know if that distracts you or not, but I got a solution there. So props to people in Nashville for a great July 4th. I don't know if you guys have paid attention to this. I think this story basically bubbled up on Friday, and certainly throughout the weekend it's continued to be an issue. There is a sprinter named Sha'Carri Richardson who tested positive for weed and is not going to be able to run in the Olympics. I don't agree with the rule. I don't think it's a smart rule because, again, I've always made a distinction between drugs that are that help you, steroids, for instance, performance-enhancing drugs, and drugs that are something that over time would actually make you less efficient in your sport. But what I would point out about the Olympic rule that makes no sense is this. We are allowing a New Zealand woman, let me repeat that, a New Zealand woman who used to be a man to compete in Olympic weightlifting. In order to compete as a woman, you have to fill your body with estrogen and all sorts of hormones which are not natural to change your sex. You're already biologically a male, bigger, stronger, faster than women on average, and then you also get to pump your body full of estrogen, and that is allowed to allow you to compete against other women in a weightlifting sport. That's allowed. That is the definition of a performance-enhancing drug, because if that drug did not exist, then you would be unable to actually compete in the Olympics at all. Meanwhile, we are not allowing Sha'Carri Richardson to sprint because she used weed. I'm sorry. I believe that rules should be logical and they should make sense. If you want to prohibit weed, then how in the world do you allow a man to change his gender to become a woman and compete in the Olympics, but you won't allow a woman to smoke weed? That makes no sense. Either have stringent drug testing laws which prohibit everything performance enhancing and non-performance enhancing, or don't. But don't tell me that a non-performance enhancing drug costs you your ability to compete in the Olympics, and that a performance enhancing drug, one that changes your gender and is the only reason you're able to compete, is permissible. The logic here is inherently flawed and nonsensical. I think Sha'Carri Richardson should be able to run if we're going to allow men to turn themselves into women and compete in weightlifting. One or the other needs to apply. I don't know about you, but as people have started to attack America more and more, I have become a steadfast proponent of American exceptionalism on a level that I wasn't several years ago. And it's because of people like Congresswoman Cori Bush, who tweeted on July 4th, when they say the 4th of July is about American freedom, remember this: the freedom they're referring to is for white people. This land is stolen land, and black people still aren't free. Well, if the land's stolen, should we have to free the entire continent? Do you want people going back to their original locations? Moreover, if black people still aren't free, how in the world were you able to be elected to Congress and make $175,000 a year from taxpayer money in order to tell people how awful America is? Look, there's a reason why people die to get to America. From Africa, from Asia, from Latin America, all around the world, people are trying to get to America every single day. We are imperfect, but from the moment this country was founded, the Declaration of Independence laid out the ideals upon which our country would be based. There is no other country in the world that makes citizenship easier than the United States of America. Almost no country allows citizenship based merely on you being born here. Almost no country, even democracies, allow as much immigration as the United States does from a legal immigrant perspective. Japan is about to host the Olympics. Japan is an Asian democracy. It is almost impossible to become a citizen of Japan if you are not born in Japan. That's commonplace, even for democracies. The idea that the United States of America is anything other than the greatest and most successful voice for freedom in the history of the world is transparently false. And so on July 4th of all days, for someone who is making a living off taxpayer funds to be this uneducated and this unintelligent about America is sad, but all too common. Let me just hit you with a couple of facts. 4% of the overall number of African slaves that were traded out of Africa ended up in the United States of America. 4%. There is an ideal that has become the focal point of American life, that all that matters is slavery. Slavery was only legal in the United States of America for 80 years, from 1783 to 1863. Emancipation Proclamation, we became an independent country in 1783. And it wasn't even legal in all states for those 80 years, as many different states had already begun to end slavery before those 80 years were passed. We are approaching the 250th anniversary of 1776. That means for almost 70% of our history, however you want to define it, as an independent nation, we haven't allowed slavery. Britain allowed slavery in the American colonies. If you are furious about 1619 to 1863, then the vast majority of those years, you should be addressing your ire at the British, okay? This is such a transparent falsehood. This idea that the United States is a fundamentally racist country. I think there is a strong argument that the United States, if you look at all the data, if you look at who we allow to become citizens, if you look at how diverse our population is actually the least racist country in the entire world. And what you are doing when you are attacking the foundations of American democracy is lifting up totalitarian regimes like China right now. You are lifting them by insulting the country inside. No one can beat America. The only way America fails, and the Chinese know this, and the Russians know it, is if we tear each other down inside of the country. Right now, we are so busy fighting internally, throwing punches at each other and at our nation's history, that we aren't recognizing that China is punching us in the back of the head all day long, every day. I mean, I was young during the Cold War, but we're in a much more serious Cold War than even existed when we were going toe-to-toe with the Soviet Union in my youth in the 1980s, and sadly, a lot of people haven't recognized what's going on. Finally, I want to leave you with this thought. Trevor Bauer is accused of sexual assault by one woman. In his defense, which is going to be a tough one, and I think Trevor Bauer is an idiot to ever put himself in this perspective, is that the woman he is accused of sexually assaulting reached out to him and said she was into rough sex, and he gave her a black eye and he injured her as a part of what he says was consensual rough sex. That's a tough defense. It's a messy situation for Major League Baseball to investigate. It's why I've always argued that the leagues shouldn't be involved in trying to determine whether or not criminal charges should be brought or there should be punishments for players based on their behavior. But I want you to think about this with me. Trevor Bauer immediately suspended by Major League Baseball based on one allegation. To my knowledge, 22 different women have accused Deshaun Watson of sexual assault. Houston Texans star quarterback. NFL still hasn't done a thing to Deshaun Watson. How is it that Trevor Bauer, based on one allegation, again, I think everybody deserves the right to a trial. I think everybody deserves a presumption of innocence. I actually disagree with the idea, which the NFL started, of the personal conduct policy, of leagues conducting investigations. I think all of that is an awful precedent. But how is it that Trevor Bauer gets suspended immediately based on one allegation, and nothing has happened to Deshaun Watson based on over 20 allegations? The NFL still has not done a thing to Deshaun Watson. Just asking. Think about this from that perspective. How can you reconcile the treatment of Trevor Bauer while also recognizing what's happened with Deshaun Watson? We got a case of serious privilege going on with Deshaun Watson. Quarterback privilege, black privilege, nobody's talking about that. Deshaun Watson might be, who knows, the Jeffrey Epstein or Bill Cosby of the NFL. Trevor Bauer already suspended, and his career with the Dodgers may be over. Worth thinking about. Precedent matters. Decide what the policies are and apply them evenly, no matter the consequences. I appreciate all of you. You can go download the podcast now. Give us 5 stars. You can do the same for the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show every day, 12 to 3 Eastern, 11 to 2 Central, 10 to 1 Mountain, and 9 to noon on the West Coast. I am Clay Travis, and this has been OutKick the Show.